came across this really amazing gadget. It's called the Muse, and it's a brain sensor. So you basically put it on your head like this, and it fits nicely against your forehead, tucks behind your ears, and then you can see on your app, it connects and it calibrates with your brain. And then I meditate, and if my mind is wandering, it makes a sound of rain on the app, falling rain. And if my mind is focused, it goes quiet and I hear little birdies tweeting. And every time the little birdie tweets, I get a point. If I get so many points, I can have a competition with my 12-year-old son to see how many points he can get. And in this way, I help him to focus. And I think of a near future where you go on a date, you meet someone online, you don't know them, you sit at the restaurant, and before you order the wine, there's another device that's more advanced than the Muse. You put it on their head, and you got an app on your phone, and you scan that person's brain. And you say, look, this has to be done before we engage, before we court. And then your phone says, oops, no. And you say, look, I'm sorry, your amygdala is way too big, which tells me that you are emotional, stressed, and generally out of control. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for you being cool, calm, collected, making good decisions, etc. It's just really not as thick as it should be. And, oh my word, your hippocampus is also suffering. And that's probably due to stress. Your memory and learning is surely damaged. Your temporal to insular pole shows that you haven't been thinking thoughts of loving kindness and altruism lately. I mean, does this sound like science fiction to you? Well, it's not really. It's happening. Neuroscience is able to tell if your brain is functioning in these ways. How fit is your brain? How fit is your brain? Do we know? Your bodies might be attractive and fit and strong, but how fit is our brain? Neuroscience can tell if we are consumed by stress or if we are able to be resilient. How would that look on an interview? No, we don't want to see your CV. Just put this thing on your head and we'll find out who you really are. Neuroscientist Sarah Lazar, who really pioneered this work, and she's coined the term neuroplasticity. It means that our brain changes shape. It's the plasticity of the brain. It can change shape. But stress affects the way our brains function, according to this research. It alters the shape of our brain, stress, and how various parts of the brain speak to each other. Stress begins with something called the Hypothalamus Pituitary axis, or the HPA. And it's a series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and also on the kidneys, which control our reaction to stress. It's a very ancient system, very old system. We come from a long lineage of this functioning. So when your brain detects a stressful situation, the HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for a fight or a flight, okay? Or maybe a freeze, which is very good in the old days if you encounter a wild beast or an attacking tribe. But high levels of cortisol over a long period of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala and your brain's fear center. And in the modern life, we have much more stress than ever before, than your parents did or your grandparents or their parents. So what happens is the amygdala at the back of the head shuts down the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. So the amygdala comes in like the Hulk and smash. And it's really about fight, flight, or freeze. So it prepares our body for a fight. It shuts down smarty pants, which is prefrontal cortex. It affects the librarian, which is the hippocampus. And it turns us into a fighting machine, which is not so good. when we are dealing with in a meeting or emails or work deadlines or overwhelm or issues at home. We're not going to fight or run away, but this is a very ancient response. So understanding this, what can we do? So as these levels of cortisol rise, electrical signals in your hippocampus, remember that part of your brain that is associated with learning, memory, and stress control, well, that deteriorates. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis. So when it weakens, so is your ability to control your stress. It's kind of like a vicious cycle. And that's not all though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to shrink in size. And too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, which makes us human. And the prefrontal cortex regulates your concentration, your decision-making, your judgments, your social interactions. Stress also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means that chronic stress might make it harder to learn and remember things, and also sets the stage for more serious problems like depression and later Alzheimer's. I recall as being a young boy at school having panic anxiety attacks before exams, throwing up in the bathroom, and then sitting in the exam and feeling so overwhelmed with stress that I can't remember what I had studied weeks before, because my hippocampus was being affected by my stress response. And if someone at school had taught me how to regulate myself through mindfulness and breath work, I might have been able to do a lot better at school. But no one told me. No one helped me. And even these days when I speak to teachers, they say, we don't have time to take 3 breaths before the class. We don't have time to do that with our children. Our schedule is just too busy. So are we creating another generation of human doings rather than human beings? And actually, at the end of the day, it will affect our productivity and our levels of happiness.